has a mindset where it punches below its weight. We have to punch not above our weight. We have to punch not below our weight. We have to increase our weight and punch the post.
ये हमारा सिद्धांत है, हम घर में घुस के मारेंगे.
You know, victims of terrorism do not sit together with perpetrators of terrorism to discuss terrorism.
नमस्कार, जय हिंद, जय भारत and welcome to Dev Talks. हमारे साथ we have with us the eminent Abhijit Chavda ji, who will talk to us about geopolitics, what's happening in the world. पहले तो sir, नमस्कार, welcome to the show. It's been a while that we have done a show together. Last time I think we were together, JD, we had done a recording, if you remember.
Well, thank you so much for having me on Dev Talks. Always wonderful talking to you. My pleasure. And it's great to do a collab with you, because these are tough times, these are trying times, and I think it's all of us need to stick together.
That's right, indeed. Absolutely. So, Pehle, let me just kind of take your overview. What do you think happened, and how do you think happened in Kaise Hua Sab Kuch? So we talk in both mixed sort of a language. Sindoor mein, what do you think happened? Kaise hua sab kuch, and India ka kya role nikal ke aa raha hai aage jaake?
So Operation Sindoor was very surprising and very shocking in some ways, because the kind of military capabilities that we displayed, I was very pleasantly surprised and shocked to see them, especially the air defense capabilities that we showed. I mean, we brought everything down. So overall, Operation Sindoor, from a technological perspective, from a military perspective, was a success. No question. Whatever we wanted to achieve, we achieved it. But from a geopolitical perspective, we are still exactly where we were. So we still have this nation next to us, this terrorist nation, this mercenary nation that serves foreign masters. That's the raison d'etre of Pakistan, to serve somebody else. So we still have it next door. Their capabilities haven't been destroyed. We obviously poked holes into their air defense capabilities. We destroyed the Chinese radars. We shot all their projectiles down and so on. But it still exists. It's not been destroyed. We haven't destroyed their military capabilities. Now they're going to rebuild. And they're going to learn some lessons from what happened, right? They now know what our capabilities are. They know where their deficiencies, the deficiencies that were exposed by us, and they're going to try and plug those holes. I'm pretty sure the Chinese have watched this with great interest and very carefully, because their weapon systems, allegedly, some of them were involved. The long range missile, the PL-15 or whatever it is, their radars, and allegedly, apparently, their JF-17s perhaps may also have been part of the thing. So they would have watched this with a great amount of interest, and they would have derived some lessons from this. And so overall it's been very interesting. It's been a military victory for us. It's been a humiliation for Pakistan, but geopolitically we are still exactly where we were. So we haven't been able to solve the problem that that we ideally would like to solve. The solution, we all know from Bharat's perspective, is the Balkanization of Pakistan. I have nothing against the people of Pakistan, even though I know that they all want us dead. Most of them, they want us dead. But listen, the overall objective has to be that. But of course, the problem is that Pakistan is a very valuable and important mercenary nation for larger and more powerful foreign masters like the US and China, essentially. Even for smaller, less powerful nations like Turkey, Pakistan is valuable, and so on. So these nations, they want Pakistan to keep on existing. The American vested interest in Pakistan came to the fore very rapidly once we started hitting those air bases. So that was interesting to see. Trump had to step in. He all that happened, and I'm sure some Chinese understanding with the Chinese would have been there from Trump's side. So at the time that this 3-day war was happening, the US and China were engaged in hidden, covert trade talks. I mean, on the surface, in front of the world, they were fighting each other, 145% tariffs and 125% tariffs as retaliation. But behind the scenes, they were engaging in dialogue. And I'm pretty sure they reached some kind of understanding vis-a-vis Pakistan and India also. I think when it comes to Pakistan, the Americans and the Chinese pretty much see eye to eye. Both nations want Pakistan to continue existing. Both have different interests in Pakistan. But for both nations, for both the US and China, it will be a disaster if we succeed in balkanizing Pakistan and ending this terrorist threat. So, and maybe from our perspective, it would have been, even though we don't say it, perhaps it was expected that America, especially Trump, will come in the way at a certain point in time. I'm sure at some point in time it was expected. The media won't speak about it and so on. So I think we achieved what we wanted to achieve. The short term and limited objectives that we had. It would have been great if our troops were next morning in POK, but maybe that's for next time.
Interestingly, you're right. We've not achieved the holistic goal of breaking Pakistan, which is the main objective. जो सबसे बड़ा हमारा है कि भाई तोड़ ताड़ के बराबर करो, so that at least we know how to deal with it after that. But something has been achieved, which is very interesting, and I'm actually reading stuff coming out from the RUSI, the Rand Corporation, and all these guys, which are hardcore leftists, now slowly saying कि यार कुछ तो किया है, इंडिया ने मार जोर से मारी है, and एक चीज दिखता है कि पाकिस्तानियों के अंदर से there is a certain amount of reservation कि यार do we do this again? How far do we take it? Because 22, if it's this, then we keep it below the threshold. So there is an impact that is being seen within the Pakistani thought process, which is interesting, which I don't think they will improve. कुत्ते की पूंछ है साले, कुछ नहीं होगा उनको.
It's too much to expect for them to improve, but certain objectives have definitely been achieved. See, the Western media, the Western think tanks also in public, they will not say that India has demonstrated tremendous superiority and so on, but certain things they will begrudgingly accept behind closed doors. First of all, the bogey of Pakistan's nuclear blackmail has been destroyed. The Pakistanis, after you hit 11 air bases in 20 minutes, if they still don't use nukes, then when are they ever going to use nukes? So the nuclear blackmail threat, that's been deflated for sure. That's one big thing we achieved. The second thing we achieved is that we utterly shocked the world with the quality of our air defense system. Nothing went through. Today we can say it without a question mark that we have the world's best battle-tested air defense system, better than Iron Dome, better than the American Aegis system, Patriot system, whatever you want to say. And it's a multi-layered system. We have done whatever we can with the weapon systems that we have at our disposal. The ancient Bofors L-70 gun from the 1940s, we have done some jugaad with it and put AI and radars and whatnot in it, and it automatically destroys the targets, the incoming drones and projectiles. We have the Pichora system from the Cold War era. We have the possibly the Barak system may or may not have been used. The Akash system for sure came out as a superstar, and then we obviously have the S-400 and whatever else we used. So it's a very interesting patchwork system that somehow worked beautifully together. And the real way to look at this is to contrast what we did in 2025 with what how we performed in 2019. So in 2019, you could say, from a realistic perspective, to some extent, we were outmaneuvered. We had, first of all, we used MiG-21s. Secondly, one of our MiG-21s, for whatever reason, ended up over Pakistani airspace and got shot down. At least one we know. And our pilot was captured. We were able to bring him back. So that's one thing that happened. We obviously did the airstrikes in Balakot, but we were not able to show any proof. Right? We did not, send drones to film the strikes. And then we also ended up shooting down one of our helicopters. Right? Friendly fire thing. This time, look at the difference. I don't know which aircraft we used, first of all. People are speculating maybe the Rafale was used, maybe the Sukhoi was used.
Rafales and
Yeah. Okay, so we don't have any official statements about which aircraft were used. But
the
weapon
categories tell you which,
Yeah. So you can infer what actually happened, right? Yeah. But we did not use the ancient MiG-21s anymore in this particular 3-day war. So that's one thing. Secondly, we sent loitering drones of some kind deep into Pakistani airspace without the Pakistanis knowing about it. And these drones calmly filmed strike after strike after strike and sent the data back to India. Right? talk about poking holes into the Pakistani air defense system.
Well,
You
loitering
have
around.
these, yeah,
Loitering.
you have these slow moving, reasonably large loitering drones that are that are sitting ducks, sitting targets, and the Pakistanis could not detect that. And that's before the strikes began. So we sent these drones into Pakistani airspace before any strike began. So much difference. If we compare 2019 Balakot, the Balakot event, with the 2025 3-day war event, it's a night and day difference.
Yeah.
I think it has shocked the whole world. I was, I was kind of worried for quite some time. The question was there in my mind: has the Indian military establishment absorbed and incorporated the lessons of the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war and the Ukraine war? The way AI is being used on the battlefield, the way drones are being integrated in everything. Drones are a part of everything, and it's clear that we are actually at the forefront of all this. So it's really, I was very pleasantly and very happily shocked at how the way we performed. And I'm sure the whole world has noticed this. They won't speak about this because they don't want to be complimentary towards India, because we are not their allies, we are not their vassals. But yeah, I think it's been a big shock for the world, the way we performed.
Absolutely. Military wise, I had no doubts because, just the sheer confidence on the military I have, that these guys learn. Yeah, they're very quiet.
That's great to see. That's great to see.
They're very quiet. They won't speak. And that's I think somewhere down the line a problem also. We need to start speaking. Guys just don't want to say, yeah, and you see the DG AD who came to what do you call, the Smita Prakash's show. He was so calm. Yeah, we have a good system. We shot everything down. Yeah, we are still working on it. It's not fully developed. You're like, okay, you're working on a system that basically took down more than 1,500 drones in a scope of 3,000 kilometers. And you're saying it's not fully set. That's interesting.
Good. It's good to hear that.
Good to hear that. So that's there. But America, Trump, I personally expected this. So I was laughing when he actually came out and said this. People were very angry, and I posted my comments on Twitter the other day that don't bother about it. We've got what we wanted. We've done what we wanted. But interestingly, Trump is trying to appease the MB, right? By kind of going after Qatar, going to what do you call, that aircraft business and this and that, and kind of taking in a lot of money from the Middle East. I won't say MB is all over the Middle East, but Qatar for sure. So what do you see this whole thing suddenly coming up, and the distance of Trump growing from Netanyahu and Modi? This is very interesting to me, especially after this Middle East visit. Before that wasn't the case. What happened here?
So I'm assuming you mean the Muslim Brotherhood, right? By the MB. Right. So Trump is an interesting guy. He's always played by his own rules in his own way. He doesn't see anything wrong with conflict of interests. If the audience perhaps hopefully would have been keeping an eye on Trump's business empire and their the way it is deployed in the Middle East, you have various family members of Trump who are investing in various industries and various businesses in the Middle East. This recent trip to the Middle East, it was an official presidential visit, but it also resulted in a lot of new developments from the Trump business empire's perspective, right? So, and his daughter's father-in-law, the senior Mr. Kushner, he has been appointed as the ambassador to I don't remember which nation. So Trump plays this sort of game. He has all his family members involved in the thick of things, and he's perfectly fine with them benefiting to the nth degree because he's the president. So that's one observation about Trump. Now, definitely, he seems to, at least superficially from the surface, seems to be kind of distancing himself from two of his greatest friends or so-called supposed allies, which is Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Modi. So Trump is a very egotistic person. He expects a tremendous amount of deference from everybody that deals with him. and perhaps he did not see sufficient difference from Mr. Netanyahu. And when it comes to Prime Minister Modi will be very friendly with Mr. Trump, and he will give him the most amount of respect. But when it comes to the national interest, I don't think Mr. Modi is gonna, allow Trump to trample over India's national interest. So we have seen one thing, that whenever Mr. Trump has ever in the past tweeted about India, Prime Minister Modi has very quickly been has made it a point to very quickly respond with a great amount of warmth to Mr. Trump's tweets. And this time, when Trump tweeted about the so-called ceasefire, Mr. Modi ignored that completely. And in Mr. Modi's address to the nation, he did not mention the US, he did not mention President Trump. So, yeah, you could, from that perspective, you could say there is a rift, and there seems to be a rift with Mr. Netanyahu also. So Trump is that sort of guy. He wears this as a badge of honor. He has this book. I have read the book. It's called The Art of the Deal. And if you read the book, it's all about one phone call after another and how he deals with various people. And it's all about keeping the adversary, whoever you're tangoing with on that phone call, keeping that person off balance, keeping that person guessing what's going to come, and being as unpredictable as possible, and being super transactional. I am making this phone call. I want this thing to result from the phone call, and I just want that. I may not worry about the big picture perspective, the long-term perspective. So Trump is that sort of guy, very transactional, and for him, the greatest thing in the world is trade, and he has achieved a tremendous amount of trade from his recent Middle East trip. The Saudis are gonna buy more than $300 billion worth of American arms and equipment, and so on and so forth. He's got a very expensive gift from the Qataris, I believe. Was it Qatar or Oman? I think it was Qatar.
$400 million worth of By the way, the Qataris have been trying to sell that jet for, I don't know, 5 years now.
Okay, maybe it's a good investment from their perspective. We're gonna give them a gift that's worth $400 million, but maybe we're gonna get 10x the result. Maybe he's gonna invest 4 billion, 5 billion, maybe 10 billion, maybe more than that in our country, just because we have been deferential and so nice to him, and we've given him an expensive gift. So if you understand how Trump works, you can use that to your advantage, as long as it doesn't impinge on your national interest.
That was a joke, and he said, "Oh, they gifted it to me." No, they gifted it to the Air Force. Then the next day he says, "Yeah, they gave it to the Air Force. It's free." No, they're going to spend another $400 million to fix it. It's not free. It's actually going to be more expensive. It's really funny that he gets called out by, I won't say his establishment, but his own people. And he doesn't get called out, but they have to put out the facts, and they're like, and they it's really interesting that this happens every time with him. And even now, the if you look at what the State Department came out and said, they said, it was a supportive role and we were speaking to everybody, but the countries dealt with it by themselves. But nobody listens to the State Department anymore. क्योंकि सारा एक्शन तो ट्रम्प करता है ट्वीट में रात को 12 बजे. So nobody listens to the State Department anymore.
Yeah, it's like the US establishment, the State Department, and every other department. They have a firefighting role because Trump is supremely contradictory. He will say one thing today, and tomorrow morning, just 12 hours later, he'll say something which is exactly the opposite of that.
Yeah,
and that's been a pattern in his life. He has this track record of making questionable decisions. He has a track record of trusting and promoting the wrong people, and that goes back decades essentially. I mean, if you have kept track of Mr. Trump and his rise in his career, you will see he's done that over and over again, and he's always thick as thieves with very, very dubious people at times. So when you have a president like that, you have essentially a firefighting role, and every morning, whenever the press conference happens, the media interaction happens, the person who's in the hot seat has to undo the damage or do some firefighting, and that's how it goes with Trump.
And funny thing is, it's not being taken seriously. Whatever Trump is saying, it's been taken seriously by our opposition, but beyond that, around the world, nobody cares. Nobody's really given this thing. But I want to ask you about are dealing with Trump. We are doing a trade deal, which is obviously in our benefit as well. Okay. And it's not that कि America will benefit only. सब कुछ है, हमको भी काफी कुछ मिलेगा उसके अंदर से. We'll get quite a bit. $500 billion is a lot of money. Let's put that on the table. And I know Modi ji, Piyush Goyal, these guys are hard negotiators, so they won't really this thing. What do you think we should get from the US for this gaff? There is a cost, and Modi ji, he will thanda karo the khichdi. He will take a cost 6 months down the line, but he'll take a cost. What do you think he would look for?
Yeah, so very you pointed something very important out, that when so Trump essentially came in the way and prevented us from taking our military action, our special military operation, to its logical conclusion. So yeah, he did that, and he's powerful enough to make that happen. He forced us essentially
Did we
to
even
stop.
want to go to that extreme? I don't.
Whatever the objectives may have been, I think they were kind of curtailed, and we did not get to call a close to the operation. A unilateral pause. We were made to do that, so I think something may have been incomplete, and that's really annoying. So he's done that, and as we know, Prime Minister Modi doesn't forget these things. Now, obviously, we are not as powerful as the US. We are nowhere as powerful as the US, but there will be a price to pay, and not it's not going to be a price that will have to be paid in anger or immediately. There's going to be a price to pay in the long term for the US. I mean, India is not going to trust the US anymore. That's one thing. We obviously are currently engaged in negotiations for the upcoming trade deal whenever it happens. Trump wants us to have zero tariffs on whatever he's dumping into India. It won't work like that. We're going to negotiate hard, and I think that's one of the reasons why he was annoyed. That's one of the reasons why Trump is annoyed with India, because we are negotiating really hard. We are negotiating hard and fair, and he just wants us to roll over, and that's not happening. I think the repercussions are going to be that India is not going to buy US weaponry. Look, one of the reasons our missile strikes were so incredibly accurate is because we did not rely on GPS. We relied on multiple providers, including our own system, whichever it was. I think probably would have had GPS plus some Russian thing plus our own thing, for redundancy. It's always good to have redundancy. And it is also possible that the media may not have reported it. It's also possible the Americans may have switched off GPS for us again during this three-day conflict. It's possible.
We were using Navik.
So we now have that fallback. We have the fallback today. But imagine if we did not have that. They would have had us by the scruff of our necks, right?
They did that in 99, huh?
Yeah, they did that in 99 during the Kargil war, right? Right. So we've learned the lessons from the Kargil conflict. Now the thing is that they don't have a lot of leverage over us. They have trade leverage over us, so they can essentially make it very hard for us to trade with the world if they want. Essentially, that's called trade sanctions, economic sanctions, by some other, by whatever term you want to use. But that's essentially what he threatened, Trump. That's what one hears, that we will stop doing trade with you, we'll stop trading with you. That's the threat that he seems to have issued to us. So imagine he only has trade. Imagine the US only has trade leverage over us right now. But if we buy their weapon systems, let's say that flying trash can, the F-35, let's say we buy that. Now that thing is going to come with backdoors and kill switches and whatnot. Yeah. It's like, for the audience, to make the audience understand, it's like every morning when you want to take the F-35 for a training sortie or whatever, you need to receive an OTP on your phone. And you have to receive the OTP, you have to give your full flight path and everything that you are planning to do for the day. And once it is approved, you get the OTP, and it's valid for 6 hours or whatever. That's how you get to use the F-35 essentially. And I am not making this up. I'm not speaking out of my backside. The Australians know this very well. They purchased F-18s in the 1980s. Pakistanis no, but the Pakistanis are allowed to do whatever they want with their F-16s.
No. They wanted to fit some Chinese weapons. No.
Okay, that is obviously a no-no. That's obviously a no-no. Fitting Chinese weapons on the F-16s will not be allowed. But the Americans will allow Pakistanis to try and use the F-16 against India, they used them in 2019. The Australians bought FA-18s in the 1980s, and they discovered, to their utter shock, that when they took these shiny new aircraft for a spin, the target acquisition system refused to lock on to targets they wanted. It would only allow them to lock on to targets that were pre-programmed by the Americans. It took them more than 2 decades to crack the code and to install their own workaround in the FA-18s. 20 years, imagine that. Now imagine you buy the F-35. What's going to happen? We already have some American, weapon systems like the Poseidon aircraft and whatnot. I think it is very dangerous for us to buy more American weapons. So one thing that Trump is gonna, one of the consequences is gonna face is we're not gonna buy the F-35. We're not gonna buy other American weapon systems. That the way that whatever they're trying to sell to us, I think we're gonna revert to either the French weapon system, maybe the Rafale, or we may even think of the Sukhoi 57 if it is possibly good enough for our purposes. I think what we need to do is we need to go full steam ahead on our own indigenous programs, the AMCA, the TG, the twin engine deck based fighter, if it is still a thing. And obviously we have to acquire somehow or the other, buy, beg, borrow, still whatever jet engine technology, while also keeping our Kaveri program running in parallel. So these things will have to be done. By the end of this decade, we need to have these things sorted out. But we cannot buy American weaponry, and this is one of the prices the Americans will have to pay for their interference in this conflict.
Yeah, there's no question. I have a little bit of a difference with you with regards to the kind of the purpose of the operation. I think we didn't want to go further. Trump, it does put a pressure in the sense we didn't probably hit them as hard as we wanted to. That's all I would say.
Possibly, yeah. But, so we did not achieve the full scope of our objective.
You always give that 10% discount, which is fine. But the strikes in Pakistan, when you look at it, we basically took out American systems, Turkish systems, and Chinese systems on the same side. This has never happened in history.
No.
Right.
I mean,
what have not touched something like this? They've not done it.
I think, that's the thing that happened. One here that there were Turkish drone operators present on. Yeah, there we have it. So that one here, and possibly those two were taken out, as collateral damage. Yes. One also hears.
Yeah.
Right. One also hears that there were, wherever you have F-16s in a Pakistani airbase, you will have a bunch of babysitters who are Americans, who are technicians, and who will never let the F-16 out of their eyesight, right? So you're going to have, if an F-16 is taken out in an airstrike, missile strike, whatever, you may have technicians there who may or may not become collateral damage, American citizens. So that also may possibly have happened. So we have taken out Chinese systems. I don't know how many Chinese personnel may or may not have been there. So China, Turkey, and the US, all three nations had defense equipment, military equipment that was targeted by India successfully. Like you say, it's never happened in any war before. And that's why all three nations have this vested interest in making it look like Pakistan has done actually reasonably well compared to India. And that's why they are trying to push that completely false narrative of X number of Indian fighter planes going down and 27 Indian UFOs went down or whatnot, right? Provide us one shred of evidence. They can't do that. CNN is peddling that. Rand Corporation is peddling that. I don't know who else is peddling this nonsense. Show us a shred of evidence. There's this publication called the National Interest or something. They are also claiming that X number of Indian fighter planes went down.
They've now switched.
Shows evidence.
They've switched the game. Yesterday's article switched it completely.
Okay. I haven't kept track with what happened yesterday, but okay, good for them. Yeah, so that's the deal. So because their weapon systems have been proven to be inferior to what we have used, that's why they are unhappy, and that's why they want to make this claim that there maybe some Rafales went down, because the Rafale is a competitor to the American weapon systems, and the Americans and the French are actually adversaries. They're not on the best of terms. They've never have been on the best of terms, despite France being a member of the EU and NATO. France is the only quasi sovereign nation with a quasi-independent foreign policy in the whole of the NATO and EU combination. Yeah. So they are competitors of the Rafale, and that's why they would want to push this false narrative.
I absolutely agree with that, because I'd said this, that it's not just the Western arms market, it is the Turkish arms market, the Chinese arms. Everybody like hello, calling each other, "Babe, roko inko, sala is bloody breaking all our weapons." So think
about it. The Turks, they have created this big hype that their drones are the best in the world. The Kizil Elma drone, the Bayraktar drone, or whatever. Those drones were used in the hundreds against India. and
Yeah.
all were taken out by our various systems. And maybe some of the systems we used were Israeli systems, and we know that Turkey Israel love hate relationship. They have an interesting relationship for sure. uh, so yeah.
The Barak is a joint developed system.
Yep.
There are three types of radars. I don't want to mention which ones in specific, but there are three types of radars which are joint developed again, which are used in our air defense as well as the Israeli Iron Dome in air defense. A
Mhm.
lot of people don't know that. The back end cooperation between India and Israel is far ahead. People have no idea what all happens at the back end. Trust me,
Mm.
the whole anti-drone systems that they are using is a lot to do with what we've produced. So
Mhm.
there's a very quiet understanding between the two countries. ये तो ऊपर नीचे चलता रहता है. It's just not spoken about, and I don't think anybody wants to even talk about it. So there
No,
is
no, no.
joint development and all that stuff which keeps on happening.
Mhm.
Interestingly, Turkey is one place where I think Modi Saab is taking out his wrath, and I don't see Turkey being able to do squat much about it, except for making a map of Bangladesh, which is fair enough. We guys came out, and so when they did that, I put out, I put out Armenian genocide, ye wo sab kuch. So they, couple of Turkish accounts kind of just backed off.
Mhm.
Turkey's interest in this entire thing is more about the Islamic part rather than anything else, right? And today, the holy alliance of Pakistan, Turkey, and China, the Turkish have caught 5 Chinese spies in their defense industry and thrown them out, by the way, and they're like charging one of them with espionage and probably even hanging them today. That's the news that has come out of the Turkish media. 5 Chinese spies in Turkey.
I see.
So yeah, that's the kind of trust they have. Now, I want to ask you realpolitik and say, okay, how do we break these guys?
How do we break the Pakistan, Turkey, China alliance?
You can have Pakistan, Turkey, Pakistan, China, but I don't want Pakistan, China, Turkey, which happened in this particular conflict. How do we
Mhm.
break that?
I think we can leverage the US dislike for China in this, because see, Turkey is a member of NATO, and Turkey, everyone knows, has its own extra NATO, extra other ambitions.
Yeah.
Mr. Erdogan sees himself as a wannabe caliph. He wants to revive some kind of quasi Ottoman Empire kind of situation. He wants to create this pan-Turan corridor in Central Asia by wiping out Armenia from the map of the world after more than 2,500 years. He wants to do that. That kind of goes against, that kind of actually plays into the US interest in Central Asia, but also kind of goes against that. That's one. Secondly, the Turks, they have this their own understanding with the Chinese, which obviously the Americans will not be happy about.
Yes.
Yeah. And the same goes for Pakistan. See, Turkey and Pakistan are very interesting nations because they are very similar. Okay, these are both artificial nations. These are both populations are not. I mean, neither the Pakistanis are ethnic Turks, neither the Turks are ethnic Turks.
Mhm.
The Turks are actually converted Greeks and Armenians, right? Who got converted in the past few centuries, and the Pakistanis are just Hindus who were converted recently, and they now want to have this imaginary foreign ancestry. And both nations, they lack a history. Instead of a history, both nations have a criminal record, right? So very similar nations, and both kind of have very terroristic mindsets, that sort of thing. So it's very easy to understand why Pakistan and Turkey have this very close affinity. The Pakistanis obviously worship the Turks because the Turks are whiter than the Pakistanis, and the Pakistanis have this inferiority complex. And the Chinese, they obviously want to use all this to benefit them.
Yeah.
The more fissures and more factions there are in the Western alliances, I mean, because Pakistan and Turkey are both part of the US, thing. So the more fissures and the more inroads the Chinese can make in this, the better it is for them. How do we end this? I mean, the long-term solution is to break Pakistan only. That's the thing. But right now, what we can do is we can use, play into the American dislike for China. The Americans obviously see the Chinese as their near peer competitor, near peer threat, the only nation that can compete with them technologically, the only economic near peer power they have. The Americans are afraid of Russia because of its nuclear arsenal and because of the size of its resources and all that. But China is a different kind of threat, because China is almost where the Americans are technologically, even in terms of AI and everything else, robotics, whatever else. So if China and Turkey are playing ball, the Americans won't like it, of course. So maybe we can leverage that
Leverage
to
that.
break the
That's
thing. Yeah.
interesting. Because I think, as analysts, I think we need to start talking about stuff like this. We need to start bringing up these fault lines and actually talking about this, because that's where the conversation picks up. People start talking about it, and I think a national narrative gets picked up after that. And that's pretty, pretty much what I would do in this aspect.
And one more fault line one could exploit when it comes to the Pakistan, China, Turkey thing is the Chinese, the worry the Chinese have about radical Islamism, right? Because they have a very big, significant population of the Hui Muslims, of the Xinjiang Uyghur Turkic people, and so on. And that's been a long-term problem for the Chinese. They've tried to crush these people and their ambitions and aspirations and whatever else, to sinicize them, and that's been spoken about at length. And the Turks and the Pakistanis obviously will have will because both are Islamic, Sunni Islamic nations, they will have this affinity with the Chinese disenchanted East Turkestan freedom fighters and so on. And yeah, so that's another fault line one could exploit.
It's pretty interesting that you say this. So I have a theory, right? I have a theory about what's happening in Bangladesh, and let's talk about that before we get into questions.
Yeah, sure.
By the way, guys, there are about almost 7,200 people watching us right now. My request to everybody, please hit your subscribe buttons on both the channels. Wherever you're watching, hit the subscribe button, hit the likes. That's really, really critical. You guys want this happening more? Tell us. And you can only tell us by making sure that the likes are more than the views. Figure that out. All right. Okay. So when we see what's happening in Bangladesh, there is, of course, this whole corridor of American influence, if I may put it this thing, which is going inside. There are talks about kind of working with these Rohingya organizations to coalesce these Rohingyas and stuff like that. But when you look at this entire thing, right? When you look at what's happening there, I have two theories. One, yeah, they'll trouble us. Fair enough. We'll figure it out. We are pretty used to this game, how to kind of figure this out. The Chinese have come in and said that Lal Morihat or whatever that place is, that hum airbase banayenge, ye karenge. I don't believe that's happening, by the way. It's too close. Chinese aren't stupid. It'll be taken out in any first contact, because it's like 10 kilometers artillery range. No, nobody's that stupid to put in $1 billion in that. So I don't buy it. But I'd love your comments on that. What I feel is happening is there is a corridor which is being made to Myanmar to breach South China. Now hear me out. You've got Myanmar, then you've got Northern Thailand, right? Northern Thailand has a lot of Jamatis, by the way. You know that, right? Pakistani Jamatis are sitting there. I don't know how they've landed up there, but they're there. And then you got Yunnan. And you know what happens in Yunnan. Yunnan, by the way, my apologies before I say anything. Bihar is a beautiful state. I love it, but it's underdeveloped. Yunnan has the same problems in China. It's underdeveloped. It's got a terrible demography. There are fights between the Buddhists and the Shintos and not the Shintos, the Chinese and the and the Hans and all that stuff there. There are Muslims which create stabbings and a whole lot of stuff that happens in that area. Do you see this happening?
Yeah, it's a very interesting angle, geographical, another angle that you brought out. So let's discuss that. Bangladesh, Myanmar, Yunnan, Northern Thailand, Southern Thailand, all of this entire region. So yeah, we've got to look back at the history first of all. See, if we look at Yunnan province, the majority population, the indigenous population of Yunnan is not Han Chinese. It is of Thai extraction.
Yeah.
The Thai people, which is the same as the Thai people, which is essentially the same as our Ahom people. That's the ethnicity that you have in Yunnan. And it's another province, it's another region that's been absorbed by the Chinese through force or whatever you want to call it, annexed by the Chinese. So there is that, first of all, in Yunnan, that it's not actually Chinese. It's an occupied region by China. Now, yeah, the Americans obviously will have various projects all over the world aimed at destabilizing the nations they see as adversaries. And uh, you know we had the greatest golden chance in the 1950s, 60s, 70s to become the net security provider in Southeast Asia. I mean, the Thai people, etc., would have been so happy if India was the net security provider. But because we did not step up to the plate, that's why the Americans became the overlords of the region after the Vietnam events and all that, the Vietnam War and so on. And so that's what happened. So, yeah, this is the region that we are discussing. So, when it comes to Thailand, you could say that it's a nation under very strong American influence. I mean, whenever the Thai government tries to do something that is in its own interest, you will have these student protests and demonstrations that come out of nowhere.
Last year.
And the moment the issue is resolved, that these things disappear overnight. So that's the classic color revolution playbook that the Americans employ everywhere. And so that's something they've tried multiple times in Thailand, right? So Thailand is a nation that does whatever the Americans say. It does the American bidding. Now we have a situation in our Far East, our Northeast, the Manipur mayhem that was unleashed in 2023 May onwards, the Project K, Cookie Land for Christ. There was a Biden regime undertaking to create an artificial nation just like Pakistan in India's Far East, out of parts of Manipur, Mizoram, parts of Myanmar, parts of Bangladesh. When it comes to Myanmar, it's currently in a state of civil war, and the question is where is this unlimited supply of arms, ammunition, everything coming in from? So I see the Myanmar conflict as as a proxy war between the Americans and the Chinese. Arms are coming in from China, from the Yunnan region. Arms are coming in from somewhere else down south also. Apparently, it looks like, okay. And now Bangladesh has been co-opted into this. Bangladesh recently became East Pakistan after the expulsion of Sheikh Hasina. So that's a big geopolitical game that's being played in the region. Thailand has had its own Islamism terrorism problem, especially down south in the southern parts of Thailand, but also, like you mentioned, there are elements in the north. So all of this can be used to destabilize a nation and to hold a nation to ransom. So yeah, so there is a conflict, a shadow conflict happening in this region between the Americans and the Chinese. The Americans obviously want China to be destabilized. They also want India to be destabilized, and that's what's happening in Manipur. They want to finish the job. This project started in the 19th century of Christianizing the region. Okay, it started. Yeah, the Americans had various missionaries who started with India's Far East. Nagaland became almost entirely Christianized sometime in the late 20th century, and during the time of the Vietnam War, etc., the Americans had these projects of Christianizing Laos, of Christianizing Cambodia, and there are these people who live in the hills, interior parts of of Southeast Asia. They are called the montagnards. Okay, the people who live in the mountains. If you go there, very nice people, but they're all wearing crosses and all that. So the Americans have been doing this everywhere, and wherever you have people who convert to an Abrahamic religion, they somehow magically develop extraterritorial loyalties, and they can be used by the power that control these things. So the Americans have been playing this game for a very long time in Southeast Asia, in this part of India, and so on. So there is this battle going on there, and as a consequence, our people are suffering. The people of Manipur, etc., they are the unwitting victims of this, and India is going to have to find a solution. So the Rohingyas are involved, the Cookies are involved, the Bangladeshis are involved, the Chinese are involved, and further away the Americans are involved, and some other nations are caught in the crossfire.
We are there, Russians are there, so it's like the great game.
Yeah, well, there we go. Oh, you know what? If you're talking other nations, even Israel is involved. So,
Yeah. Everybody's there.
Yeah.
That's the place you breed China from. I've been kind of saying this for a long time that if you want to breed China, South China is the place. Don't go anywhere else. It's South China. You take Yunnan, you've broken it. There's not much of a problem. Interestingly, the Bangladesh, last question, Bangladesh chief of army staff yesterday threw a riot. You know that? Did you watch the press conference? It was
I haven't
amazing.
seen that.
Oh man, he threw a riot. He said, "Get lost. There's no bloody corridor. I am putting down everything. Corridor starts in February. I want an election in December. Let the elected government realize there is no hooliganism. I'm going to start shooting people now. He yesterday put down the rule of law, and there's a huge amount of tamasha. So a lot of people are saying that they might just be a coup in Bangladesh. I don't know. I mean, it's a very tenuous situation right now. People aren't speaking to each other, and there is widespread anger about these so-called advisors that are there. Widespread anger. People are putting, those shoes in their necks and kind of rolling around. What do you think is going to happen there? Because see, this is something that we would also have interest in, right? So, what do you think is going to happen there?
Yes, so from our perspective, we want a stable Bangladesh that is ruled by people who actually represent the people of Bangladesh, and we want a Bangladesh that is friendly with India, friendly towards India. At least a Bangladesh that doesn't create trouble for us, cause trouble for us. We have had tremendous issues with Bangladesh because we have maybe I don't know, 100 million possibly Bangladeshi infiltrators who are currently embedded in various parts of India, all across India. We have the Rohingya issue. We have the long-standing issue of Bangladesh in the past providing refuge to Indian, separatists and insurgents from various parts of India and so on. And now we know that Bangladesh has recently undergone a coup, and Bangladesh is currently ruled by the military. I mean, we have this guy called Mohammed Yunus, right? Yunus, who is the so-called whatever his position or title is, he's somebody who's been appointed as the chief puppet, but the actual entity that's ruling Bangladesh is the Bangladesh military. Now, as long as the Bangladesh military is stable, I don't see a coup happening there. It's only if the chief of the military is seen to have lost legitimacy in the eyes of his own officers, that he could have a kind of power reshuffle and a coup in that. But that's an internal coup within the military, and that doesn't really affect the long-term status of Bangladesh. So Mohammed Yunus is just a puppet. He's there, Mohammed Yunus, his only function is to keep people's attention away from where the real power lies. That's the job he's playing. That's the role he's playing, and the real power lies with the military. So if we want to deal with Bangladesh, we have to deal with the Bangladeshi military. And as long as we keep them under control and we, lay down the rules, as long as they behave, we're good. We're good in that.
Sorry, Bangladeshi military seems to be all right with us. We saved the chief twice, so I guess there is some sort of a link up being picked up there. Let's wait and watch. It's a tenuous situation. It's something that I think we will need to address, and the recent moves by the Indian government as far as the military is concerned, there's a massive exercise. And secondly, the whole cutting off of Bangladesh from our ports, which gives us about $800 billion worth of a jerk for a country which is $500 billion, less than that actually, right? It's about $430 billion worth of a GDP. You cut off $800 billion of his trade to these, you break his legs. Not in one place, you've broken it in multiple places. Traction type, hang on the ceiling type damage. Let's see what actually happens, because it's quite tenuous, and probably we could readdress this in the next podcast. But by then, guys, my request to everybody: please hit the like button really hard. Let's take some questions, and of course, please make sure that you are supporting both the channels, like both the videos. The first of a collab that we have done. If we find that you guys have enjoyed it, we'll probably think about it again. But my request to everybody, put in your questions and let's go. Firstly, okay, Bhargavaji, thank you. Abhijit ji, what precautions registration is the government working on so that the army isn't hindered by changing political parties, growing half internal front?
I'm not aware of any legislation that we may be that the government of India may be drafting or creating for this growing 0.5 internal front or something. So the thing about India is that India is a democracy. So anytime every 5 years at least we have elections, at the national level, at the central level, and anytime there's an election, there's always the possibility, however big or small it may be, that a new political party may come to power. And in the case of a democracy like ours, when a new political party comes to power, you often see a 180-degree turn in various policies. So that's something that is peculiar to democracies, and that's something we have to live with. So that's just how it is. When it comes to the 0.5 front, what India needs to do, I don't know what India is doing, but what India needs to do is we need to deport all illegals, no matter how long they have been embedded within India, whether they are Rohingyas, whether they are Cookies, whether they're Pakistanis, whether they're Bangladeshis or whatever else. If they're staying in India illegally, whenever they came, throw them out. And we don't have this thing about citizenship by birth. So if their children were born, like when the Pakistani thing happened, we discovered 80,000 plus Pakistanis had been living in India for God knows how many decades, and they have had kids over here. They have voted in India. They have served in the police force and God knows what else. This is a national security threat. So if we need to deport these people and their offspring because we don't recognize citizenship by birth, we only recognize citizenship by descent. Both parents have to be Indians. So that's what needs to happen. I know it's going to be a long process. It's been decades that we have been allowing this and suffering from this, but it needs to happen. We need to deport all illegals. Imagine 100 million outsiders are gone. How much relief the entire system will feel, right? We're going to feel lighter, and we're going to have more resources for our own people, right? Which we are currently using for these leeches who have absolutely no allegiance to our land, to our culture, and to our civilization.
Absolutely true. I agree with you. And as a matter of fact, I'm really happy that 30-day thing, and when something is moving in this particular direction, we guys have been making noise about it for the past 6 months. But okay, now previously you didn't want to kind of disturb Sheikh Hasina. I know why, because you didn't want to disturb her, because she had said, listen, if you do this, then I'll have to kind of leave the jihadis. So, that was the deal. She put the jihadis inside.
We no longer have that compulsion anymore, right?
We don't have that compulsion. So we kind of throw them out. And I'm happy stuff is happening. Do recently Bangladeshi media put out a report, literally pleading India, saying, don't open the gate in the middle of the night and push people in. That's not fair.
That's not fair, really. Okay.
They said that. They said, you past month, you guys have been pushing 300-500 people a day. This is not all right.
So it's just the beginning.
This report came about last, I think, Monday.
Okay.
No, last Saturday, just after the finish of the operation and everything like that. So this report came. I was like, okay, this is happening. I didn't know that. But I'm
glad to hear that.
That won't be the solution. Still, it has to be a all of country, all states affair where people are kind of, doing this properly.
It has to be a nationwide endeavor that everywhere, because we know they're everywhere, in every small town, village, city, we know where they are. And we can't do a thing about it. We know exactly where they are. They're all over the place. We need to identify them, round them up, and send them back home. Ghar jao, go back.
Sarvani, thank you. She says, sir, how do you see the situation in Myanmar unfolding? We spoke about that. Do you think our missiles and weapons testing will become vulnerable to the US and the Chinese watch? Oh, yeah.
Look, when it comes to the missiles and all that, obviously now the world is aware of certain capabilities, some of our capabilities, and it's always a cat and mouse game. The moment you show what you're capable of, they're going to learn some lessons from that, and they're going to try and improve and catch up with what you're doing. And then you have to be aware that they are doing this, so you have to keep on evolving and improving your weapon systems. So it's always a cat and mouse game. It's always been like that, and it's always going to be there for as long as human beings exist. Now, when it comes to Myanmar, it's a disaster situation, very destabilized nation. Half the country seems to be not under the control of the government of Myanmar, and there's a foreign hand behind it. It's not some kind of law and order situation. It's a geopolitical game that's being played by larger powers, and the people of the region are suffering as a consequence. I don't see this subsiding for some time. Actually, this is going to continue.
Be real. Thank you. He says trading trade for diplomacy doesn't build relations. Knock knock. Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't substitute trade for everything. You guys have bad relations, go and do trade with each other and everything will be fine. That's not how it works, sir. It's a very superficial and very short-term way of looking at the world.
Yeah, extremely disastrous, as a matter of fact. Silver Shroud, thank you. France shows his real face. France backstabs India by refusing to share source codes of Rafale. Please put some light into this. What's going on? Nobody will give you source codes for anything. Okay? Nobody. 100% nobody will give you. They'll give you 30%, 20%, 80%. Nobody will give you 100%. The only country that has actually given us 100% source codes is now in 2024 for the Sukhois by the Russians. That's it. So that's fine.
So I'm not aware of the Sukhoi thing. Can you elaborate on that?
So when we wanted to do the Sukhoi upgrades, we've been telling the Russians for the past 3 years, we want to do these upgrades, give us the codes. No, we can't, this, that, and all that. So we said, fair enough, we won't deal with you. And as a matter of fact, the Russians said, we want the BrahMos. So we said, bugger off, get lost. Okay. By October 2024, the source codes of the S400s and your Su-30s came in. So S400s, you can now manufacture your own, replacement supplies. This, that, all that stuff can be done here. And for the Sukhoi 30 upgrades, now that do not need to go to Russia. Previously, they had to go back to Russia for upgradation, even to fit our own systems in. Now it's not the case. Now it will be done by us, from us, with our own codes and everything. So it's a completely indigenous fighter, except the engines now.
Except for the engine, the Saturn AL whatever engine, right?
AL 41Ps.
That one, right? So I think we should really, whichever country is willing to give us source codes or to some level transfer of technology, we should deal with them. We should, revisiting what we discussed in the beginning, we should not buy American weapons. If the Russians are offering us joint production of the S-500 system, we should take it seriously. If they are offering the Sukhoi 57, you know what? No harm getting the Sukhoi 57. I'm sure it's not the best aircraft in the world, but I'm sure it's a decent aircraft. And if we can absorb some of the technology, good for us. I mean, we have money, don't we, as a nation? Use it.
It's fantastic. See, the only difference between the Su-35 and F-35 is Su-35 is battle tested.
Sukhoi 57, you mean?
Yeah, Su-57 is battle tested in Ukraine. So we know what's happening there. Our military attaches in the region would be watching it. F-35, well, it almost got shot down with a Houthi missile. So I'm kind of not...
I mean, imagine that.
What do you want? All right. YV7780, thank you. Abhijit and Aadi, both of you take on below. Do you see Donald Trump trying to redo Afghanistan 2.0 with his recent moves in the Middle East? Where?
I'm not sure about that. Where's the connection? I'm not sure. Afghanistan and the Middle East, very, very different scenarios, right?
Okay, let me rephrase this if I'm getting this correctly. Is he trying to re-engage with Afghanistan?
There has been some rumors that they want to, take control of Bagram again or have access to Bagram again. Look, we all know what's been happening in Afghanistan. There was a deal. There was a Doha Accord, right, between the US and the Taliban. About handing the power over to the Taliban, and apparently there were some secret clauses in this accord that the world has not been shown. And afterwards, it has emerged that the Americans are paying a weekly stipend of anywhere between $30 to $100 million in cash every week to the Taliban as maintenance. So clearly, the Taliban are serving some purpose for the Americans, maybe to keep the Chinese and whoever else out. So that's happening. So the Americans have influence in Afghanistan. The Taliban are to some extent, subsidized by them, but the Taliban obviously have their own minds and brains, and they are essentially a Pashtun nationalist force who want to be entirely independent of everybody else. They just want to be left alone to rule the country whichever way they want. Essentially, that's what they want. And they have issues. They have some issues, small issues with Iran and much bigger issues with Pakistan. And that's something we can use to our advantage. The Americans obviously want to meddle everywhere and configure the world and the balance of power regionally and globally as per their wishes. And that's the game they're always going to play. And that's going to cause trouble everywhere their interference happens. But to compare Afghanistan with the Middle East, I'm not sure what the connection is. So I didn't get that.
True. All right. Shankar ji, thank you. Wow, Abhijit bhai, maza aa gaya dekh ke.
Thank you, sir.
Neena ji, thank you so much for that. Dhokebaz Nehru, thank you. Final solution, break it and do ghar wapsi of Pakistanis. Good solution.
Well, you start by balkanizing Pakistan whenever you can do that. Ghar wapsi will take a century, maybe 2 centuries. It's a long-term project.
Yeah, thank you so much. AJ, thank you. Jai Shri Ram. After a lot of OSINT plus neutral analysts, and see, we need to take PAF very seriously. Out-tech, outstract them. In the end, we wiped Pakistan, but Air Force on Air Force.
See, look, you have to take any adversary seriously. You cannot afford to take anyone lightly, no matter how small or big they are. If it's a nation that's 1/5 of your power overall, you still can't afford to take them lightly. And the Pakistanis have the benefit of having American technicians on their soil, of having Chinese people, of having the Chinese military who is supplying them with whatever. So we have to take them very seriously. And the good thing is that in today's world, you don't have to go Air Force to Air Force. You can take out the Air Force before you launch a single plane into the sky. You can take out the entire Pakistani Air Force if you want with your missiles before you launch a single, before you have a single Indian Air Force plane take off. So it's not like we have to go Air Force to Air Force. We need to have a comprehensive overall strategy, and in that we are superior to them, but we cannot afford for 1 second to not take them seriously. So I agree with you.
Prithvirajji, thank you. Prithvirajji, thank you so much. He says, will balkanization of Pakistan really help in the long term? Bangladesh turned Islamic after a while. Is there a way not to let Islamists get power in the nations around us for our own safety?
Look, the first step is to balkanize Pakistan, right? But you can't incorporate those regions within. See, what is the objective of balkanizing Pakistan? You essentially want to end the tyranny of the Pakistani military, which is the dictatorial entity that is ruling Pakistan. And it's not just the military, it's a composite entity that is part military, part ISI, and part the terrorist infrastructure and all the terrorists. That entity is ruling Pakistan, and they are holding the population of Pakistan hostage for the past 70, 80 years. So we need to dismantle that entity and essentially eliminate that entity. Once that entity is eliminated, the centrifugal forces within Pakistan will break Pakistan up. The Baloch want to go their own way. The people of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa want to reunite with Afghanistan. The Sindhu Desh people want Sindhu Desh, and so on. The Punjabistan people will do whatever, and we take back POK, Gilgit-Baltistan. So that happens, and then obviously the nation, the people are obviously still Muslims. They're all Islamic, so that's a fact you have to deal with, and you can't reintegrate them within India because most of them have been indoctrinated, brainwashed into hating us and wanting us dead. So it's going to be a long process. It's going to be a 100-year project, perhaps. Maybe in 100 years the situation will be such that we can once again reunite the subcontinent under one geopolitical entity, and that's something in the future. So we are part of a long chain. We have hundreds of generations of ancestors behind us, and we're going to have hundreds of generations of ancestors, descendants in front of us, and we have to play our role. And we are a civilization that's existed for at least 10,000 years, so we don't have to think short term. We are part of a long game, and we have to play our part.
Well said. I kind of believe that because nothing happens overnight, so you got to be extremely careful. Gopal Krishnaji, thank you. Dr. Chavda, okay, is polite. Both Pakistan and Turkey are bastard countries. All right.
Well, I shall not disagree with you.
Harini ji, thank you so much. Great collaboration. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Madeleine, thank you. Pakistan will be given boomers now.
Oh, we'll see about that. If it comes to that, we'll deal with it.
Boomers will be fine because the Fauji Foundation makes diapers on their own, so they can kind of. Manishji, thank you. How should India address China's announcement of incorporation of Afghanistan into the CPEC? How many times has that happened in the past?
That's happened. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That announcement is made at least once a year, right?
And you know why they're doing it now? Just to irritate us, nothing else.
I know, just ignore. As long as there is no facts on the ground, we don't care. Your words don't matter.
See, the Chinese have made one road through the Wakhan, right? It's a Kacha road right now. They've inaugurated it. But please understand, that's a very vulnerable area. You got the Turkish sitting on top with the ISIS, not the Turkish, the Turkis, the Turkmenistan and the Tajikistan and that entire area. Tajikistan is actually on the border. You've got the Uyghurs sitting around in Pakistan-Afghanistan border region who are waiting to come. And one thing I'll say about this, and we've talked about this multiple times on my platform, is that the Taliban is extremely smart, right? They're not like these dumb Pakistanis. Taliban is very, very street smart. They know how to deal with the Chinese.
Look, the Taliban, they know all their neighbors. They have collaborated with them. They fought against them. They know everybody very well. Every ethnic group has its own identity, its own character, its own personality, and they understand the ethnic mix very well. They understand the Punjabis, they understand the Hindus, they understand the Uyghurs, they understand the Turkmens, they understand the Tajiks, they understand all of them, the Hazaras and so on, and they know how to deal with them. So the Taliban are street smart. They're very practical people. They have grown up fighting, and they know how to deal with the situation.
Yeah. All right. What is this video? WTB, thank you so much. He says China has done much for their citizen being one-party state competing US now. We would have been poor, broken country, but rich in political parties, one-party state. What's the difference of thought process? I believe democracy sucks. Anyways, my belief. What do you think?
Look, let's compare the Chinese and the Americans. The Chinese are an authoritarian nation. That's what everybody says. A dictatorship of the proletariat, the Chinese Communist Party, a one-party system. Look at the U.S. The U.S. is for all intents and purposes a two-party state. Okay, they have some other political parties which don't matter at all. So it's the Republicans and the Democrats. Now, when it comes to the foreign policy, economic policy, and the military policy, both parties have the same policy. So it's actually a uni-party state masquerading as a democracy. The US and China are very similar. The Chinese idolize the Americans. They have tried to emulate everything the Americans have done since the 1980s. So the Chinese and the Americans are very similar nations. Obviously, one is Han Chinese, one is Anglo Saxons mainly, but they have very similar ways of doing things. They are both imperial nations. They're both imperial entities, and when you have a single entity that is in charge of decision making and everything, things happen fast. It's a more agile system. In the case of India, we are a genuine democracy. Hundreds of political parties, complete chaos, elections and debates, and Indians love to argue and shout and fight, and that's all we do. Most of our energy goes in that. If we were a uniparty state, if we had an imperial system like under Chandragupta Maurya or Ashok or Rajaraj Chola or whatever, we would have been a whole different beast. So I agree with Adi on what he just said.
I might sound like a fascist, but I hate this democracy structure. I hate the fact that anybody can say whatever they want to and get away with it. What the hell?
Indeed.
Oh, preach for free speech. Yeah, okay, fine. I'll preach for free speech. Where does it exist?
Nowhere in the world. There's no free speech anywhere in the world. Some nations claim to have free speech, but tell me, in those nations, can you have speech without consequences?
In
You will have
India,
consequences.
with 1.4 billion people, 1,400 people were arrested in the last 6 months. Right? 1,400. If you put okay, let's talk about UK or USA. You know, that number goes up to 8,000.
Yeah.
And look at their populations. So I don't buy the whole sense where people say, oh, there should be free speech. People can say whatever they want to. No. I'm sorry, no. There is something known as a conscience, which we are innately born with. You know. RK, thank you. Jewish lobby and Protestants versus Roman Catholics will keep the deep state break from within, and all this will lead to us imploding from within after the attack today. Huh?
I don't know. There's so many connections in this one question. I'm not sure what it is. Look, Jewish lobby versus and Protestants versus Roman Catholics. Will the deep state break from within? Will this lead to us imploding from within after attack today? Which attack today? No, I don't see that happening. We will not be imploding from
this
within.
Is the attack that you're talking about on the Jews in Washington DC? I hope so.
Is that what he's referring to? Okay, I'm not sure.
There are two attacks. 2 people have been killed.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. So it's probably that he's referring to. Yeah.
Okay.
So I put a quirky one out on this, and I said, will Donald Trump now do a trade deal with Hamas?
I mean, he's capable of doing that. If Osama was alive and if Osama had somehow survived, he would have brought him. He would have posed with Osama perhaps for a picture, like he posed with that Al Julani fellow, the former professional head chopper who's now apparently the president of Syria.
And while Marco Rubio is telling his own Congress that Syria will fall into a civil war in the next 2 months, all happening at the same time.
I know.
These guys have gone nuts or what? Problem, thank you. What were the Modi's full set of conditions?
Well, we're not supposed to know everything, you see. Some things are not revealed to the world for the sake of the national interest and for other things. So, we don't know.
Magnum and Gopesh Kaurji, thank you for joining the channel. Jaganji, thank you. Says China successfully encircled India through a string of pearl strategy and has minimum spend of 5% of GDP for defense, research and development. Love and respect for both of you. Thank you.
So the Chinese definitely have made inroads everywhere. I'm not sure if the string of pearls has succeeded completely. Maldives obviously is a Chinese asset for now. Sri Lanka no longer is completely a Chinese asset. It's somewhere in between. The Chinese are struggling in Myanmar. Bangladesh is a US asset, even though they are peddling themselves to the Chinese and so on. They have some influence in Pakistan as well. So yeah, the Chinese see by dint of their much larger hard power and outreach, this certainly have made inroads in our neighborhood. Nepal is an issue. They're trying to bully Bhutan as well and so on. So there is that. And the Chinese, there is so much that you can learn from the Chinese. A lot you can admire them for, because if you look at how they have turned their nation around, you can learn a lot from that. From the 1980s onwards, they have spent trillions of dollars in revamping their education system, making it more STEM oriented, making it more nationalistic, making it, focusing on research and development, and focusing on very critical technologies. They have done it in a very systematic, phased, step by step manner. Their universities are some of the best in the world when they were some of the worst in the world in the 1980s. You've got to respect that. They've put in the hard work, and that's why they are where they are today. And we haven't done that. We are not even starting today to to reform the education system. Our education system is probably one of the worst in the world, and we don't even acknowledge that. We said that the NEP, new education policy 2020, is the greatest thing in the world. It's garbage. It's garbage. It's like putting a bandage on a shotgun wound. So we've got to learn from the Chinese. If we keep on saying that we will compete with the Chinese, well, you got to take it. You got to put your money where your mouth is and start making reforms. And that's not happening. And that's very
We aren't the
frustrating.
worst in the world. Yeah, we aren't the worst in the world. Have you read the Pakistani books?
Okay, so let's not compare ourselves with them, right? That's not the yardstick we should have.
That's joking. So I made this map about the India-China
Hmm.
influence a while ago. I call this the Eagle's Claw.
Hmm.
If you look at the Chinese maps, the Chinese flags, and if you look at the Indian flags, we've kind of
Hmm.
made decent pushback as far as China is concerned.
No
So
question about it. No question.
there's
Yes,
a
I
decent
agree.
pushback here, but Chinese of course are remain the Chinese.
They have much deeper pockets, and they have better infrastructure. They have their uh, the gray water navy, or whatever it's called, and they get things done much faster than we do.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
talk a lot, they do a lot.
yeah. Cancer. Thank you. Last few questions. RIC. RIC. Can
Russia and
RIC
China is talking about defeat.
defeat US militarily? Okay. Can we develop economy for it? No.
Look, the RIC will never be a military alliance. I mean,
Never.
imagine Russia, India, China together. Russia, India kind of makes sense because we don't have any issues with each other. But put China in the mix doesn't work, because if you look at Russia and China right now, they have this kind of arrangement, modus vivendi, kind of quasi alliance. But long term perspective, these are natural adversaries, Russia and China. And when it comes to India and China, once again, natural adversaries, because China currently occupies Tibet. So Russia, India, China can never become a military alliance. And if you want to defeat somebody militarily, you need to have a military alliance, right? So it's not going to work out.
That's true. Explore Unlimited. Thank you. Irritated to see victory propaganda by Pakistanis. You shouldn't get irritated,
Yeah.
brother. You should be actually watching it very carefully, because it's something that you should learn not to do. You want to know a funny thing?
Yeah, sure.
That Aurangzeb fellow, right? AVM Aurangzeb,
Mm.
right? He was
Yeah.
born in the 1970s. He's wearing a badge which is 35 years of meritorious service. He's wearing
Okay.
a ribbon.
How many flying hours does he have?
1,500. So he's
As
wearing
a
a
passenger,
35.
I suppose.
I think so. वो truck driver था यार वो. I mean, with all respect to truck drivers, I think they are beautiful, but this guy was probably a cleaner in that. He's wearing a 35 years meritorious service badge. The chief of Pakistani Air Force is not wearing that.
Okay.
That's how fake these people are.
Yeah, totally.
You know what are the badges that Asim Munir wears?
I haven't bothered to see. Please do tell.
There's a democracy medal. There is a escalation with India medal, which will get a bar, of course, now. I'm not joking. You can check it out on Wiki.
Okay.
It's what his medals are. Democracy.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
You want
It's
to
a
show
first for me.
There you go. Asim Munir. I mean, I've kind of really gone through their medals, especially all their chiefs. Oh man, it's so funny. You're like, excuse me, what is this written here? All right, let me just share my screen. I should show this to you. This will be really encouraging, because Asim Munir is now slowly coming out of Mariam bunker, I've heard. So yeah, this is his Nishane Imtiaz, Hilale Imtiaz. So इस बारी Hilale Mariam होगा, पता नहीं क्या होगा. Tamga e Difa. Okay, Siachen Glacier, which he's never been, of course.
Uh-huh.
Nuclear test medal.
Okay, he did a nuclear test apparently.
And escalation with India medal.
Okay.
ठीक है जी. Medal of conviction, blah 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 blah. Jamhuriyat medal. भैंस की आंख.
Jamhuriyat medal. Very
That's
funny.
fun.
Jamhuriyat in Pakistan.
Can you imagine? They actually give this to themselves?
I mean, you need to put something up there, right? So you gotta invent some medals, I suppose.
So I had said, he will be covered pura ऊपर से नीचे तक after the operation. Hot provocator, thank you. How can DJT keep his party going?
Or as long as DJT is in the hot seat, the party goes on. He knows how to keep the party going. It's gonna be an entertaining ride. This presidency, Trump, very entertaining. Not one dull moment.
Yeah, Virajji, thank you. The UK or Canada can even Indian Punjabis identify themselves as Punjabis and not Indians. Do they have the same mentality as Pakistani Punjabis? No. It's a generalization. I won't agree with that, actually. What do you think?
I don't think they all are like that. I mean, the ones who are visible are the ones with the Khalistani mindset, who are promoted by the US establishment. See, the Americans have made it a point to keep the Khalistan thing alive in Canada, to some extent in the US, and also in other nations like the UK, Australia, to some extent New Zealand, and some other EU nations. So they've kept the Khalistan thing going. The Khalistan project was an American project. It was implemented by Pakistan, but it was funded and financed, and the thought process came from the US as a means of keeping India off balance and keeping India. It was the first phase, after which the Kashmir thing started. So they have kept. The Americans want to have various kinds of leverage over a nation like India. India is a nation that's very large and it matters, so they want to have leverage. So you keep these things going, and whenever required, you deploy that. That the Khalistanis, the Khalistani demand still exists, and they want an independent nation, and so on and so forth. So there are people who have migrated from India, settled in Canada, and a lot of them have this Khalistani mindset. But I would not say that all Punjabis who live outside of India have that thing. That same attitude. Many of them see themselves as Indian. So you cannot say, generalize and say that they're all of that mindset.
Passport to ego. We've covered this question. Thank you for your contribution. Aksharji, thank you. How do we solve the issue of Supreme Court becoming a super legislature through basic structure doctrine and their collegium system and their misuse of Article 142?
I think the only person who's possibly capable of solving this is Mr. Modi. He's got to find the way, I suppose. But in a democracy, if you want to be a democracy, you need to have a proper democratic setup in which everybody comes under the aegis and ambit of the will of the people. That's how it has to be.
One more thing is that this is going to be a long drawn game, so don't expect overnight results. I think whatever is going to happen, this is my opinion, maybe wrong. Supreme Court game will go on till about 26 and 27 beginning. You will find this stuff heating up in the next year quite a bit. Shikharji, thank you. What subjects apart from geopolitics I should focus on to get a deeper understanding of geopolitics? Economy, history?
Yeah, history and economics. History, obviously, because you have to understand what happened. What's the backstory? If there's a conflict somewhere today, why did the conflict arise? What were the reasons? What's the backstory? So you do understand history. You got to study history, and if you understand economics, it helps obviously because everything is connected through the economic, net supply chains and corridors and whatnot, and the economic system that underpins the world, the financial system, the oil, all of that. You got to understand all of that, the flow of energy, the flow of money, and so on.
That's true. And Shruti ji says, what prompted Trump to accuse South Africa
of white genocide and criticize the president? Look, the whites, okay, the Europeans, they occupied Africa and destroyed Africa for a very long time. Now, the people who are the white people who live in South Africa today, I'm sure it's not their fault what their ancestors did, but it is natural, I would say. I'm not justifying anything. I'm just saying it would be to some extent natural for the black people to see these people as the descendants of oppressors and so on. And apparently there's been these white people have been targeted ever since South Africa became a democracy. And apparently thousands and maybe tens of thousands of them have been killed. That's what one hears, and that's obviously terrible. So that's the issue that is being raised over here, that Donald Trump raised. And there have been these rallies in which politicians, etc., have called for the extermination of white farmers and all, which obviously is terrible, right? And obviously Elon Musk is very close to Donald Trump, or at least is trying to be very close to Donald Trump. And Elon Musk is a descendant of white people who settled in South Africa. So Elon Musk has a personal connection there. So all of this ties in together.
Yeah. Last three questions, sir. One is a comment that I want to take. After a long time, I'm seeing Chinese on the show. So, ni hao.
Ni hao. Ni hao.
Okay. And please, by the way, I guess you guys are looking for a new president. Can I recommend someone? Has Trump kissed the ring?
Look, you cannot become the president of the US unless you have kissed the ring of the deep state. Yes, he has kissed the ring, for sure.
Commentator.
And in case you don't kiss the ring, you get 1963. And Trump has not been 1963. He claimed he came close to it. So
he's going to fight them. There's no question. He's going to fight them. He's fought the US AID and stuff like that. He will fight them, but he will compromise as well. Commenter, thank you. If Pakistan-China attack us simultaneously in emergency, Tejas will be without engines. Rafale still not ordered. Why can't we put pressure on government?
Look, the government knows what needs to be done, okay? And by putting pressure on the government, you're not going to miraculously have hundreds of engines come in. So today we are in this situation where we have aircraft, we don't have engines. The Americans, we have paid them a lot of money, but they're not delivering the goods and so on. And we don't have our own indigenous engine right now. So in that situation, what's the best thing we can do? We can, in the meanwhile, until we get the engines, we can rely on certain other weapons to have an overall balanced offensive and defensive system. So that's why we have invested so much in missiles. Our missiles are probably the best in the world, the scariest missiles in the world. Until 2 weeks ago, nobody had seen what an Indian missile could do. Now we have on the ground reports. We know what it sounds like when the missile is coming in, and we know you can hear it coming, but you can't do a thing about it, and so on. So we have developed some of the scariest and most effective missiles in the world with incredible precision, very, very small CEPs and so on. So because right now we have this issue that we are kind of handicapped because of the absence of sufficient engines, we are doing other things which can still give us the advantage on the battlefield. So yeah, but we need to get this thing done, the engine thing. Yeah.
Venkatesh, thank you. He says, should India move into Chittagong and Siliguri chicken egg before any pressure comes on it?
Look, that's not how the world works. If you want to take military action somewhere, like invading what is a sovereign nation, technically, and taking their territory, annexing their territory, you need to have just causes for going to war. You can't just randomly say that because I am strong enough, I can do it. Because there are other nations out there that are way stronger than you, who will then impose lots of consequences on you. So you've got to be smart about this. You can't just randomly walk into Bangladesh and take their territory, even though historically it's historically been our territory, but whatever, it's a process.
All right, Shivamji, thank you. Will we ever make Pakistan a vassal of India, and do you think India will ever beat China in dominance over Pakistan?
Look, when you use the word ever, for me, ever is a 1,000-year horizon. In 1,000 years, we'll do everything, sure, but in the next 10 years, maybe not. Do we want Pakistan as our vassal state? I don't think we want vassal states. Nope. We want a balkanized Pakistan, and each entity that comes out of it should be friendly with India. That's a good beginning for me.
Yeah, and the last one, guys. I won't take any more super chats after this. Thank you so much, King G. Thank you. Says US should never be trusted. No battle is taken place over US territory. They will always avoid frontal attack on Russia and China, Middle East, even using Israel. That's true.
Look, the one thing about the US is its incredible geographical advantage. They have the benefit of two oceans that protect them from everybody else, and they are the unquestionable top dog in the Americas. They started they had something called the Monroe Doctrine in the 19th century, and they ensured that nobody was allowed to interfere in the affairs of either North America or South America, and they are the uncontested top dogs in the region. So every single nation in South America is, you can say, a vassal of the US, and the same goes with Europe and so on. So that's a huge advantage they have. They have never had to fight a battle on their own territory since essentially the Civil War, right? 1850s and so on. So that's the huge advantage they have. That's what happens when you steal an entire continent from its natives, and then you become the champions of democracy.
That's true. And the most, actually, if I may just, US has always had this thing of non-interference. They always say this, and they end up doing whatever they're doing. And this is how great powers behave, right?
Yes,
So tomorrow, when we become great powers, we will probably behave exactly the same way. We will be
we should.
telling people, listen, behave yourself, which
Yeah.
we've started doing. If you notice, we've basically started doing this whole thing. जो पाकिस्तान के साथ आपने जाके डंडा मारा उसके सिर के ऊपर. This is how great powers behave. So there's a good old saying, right? If you want to be a superpower, start behaving like a superpower.
Start behaving, start learning, start seeing the behavior patterns and why these behavior patterns exist. Lots of Indians like to point out that the Americans are hypocrites. They say one thing, do another thing. That's a
That's
privilege that comes with being a great power.
Yeah.
It's a privilege.
Yeah.
So, that's what we should aspire for.
Sometime in about 10, 20 years, we should also have a president who goes around saying whatever he wants to and gets away with it.
I mean, let me give you a historical example. Ashok, one of our greatest emperors, he was a brutal guy. I mean, he was great for the civilization. He was great for the subcontinent, the people, as long as you were kind of not in his vicinity.
Yeah.
But he fought so many wars and did so many terrible things. But on his inscriptions, he's all peace, peace, peace. So he would say one thing and do the other. Right? So that's hypocrisy. That comes with greatness. That comes with the kind of force and power that you have.
Yeah.
So at that time, India was kind of a superpower. It's huge in the subcontinent, unified under a single emperor. And at that point in time, you could behave like that. So that's a historical example from our own history. Right? Say one thing, do the opposite. That comes when you're powerful. That happens when you're powerful.
That's absolutely true. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful session. We had a huge crowd, and I'm so happy that guys have liked it. So it's really fun. Talking geopolitics is always fun. This time we didn't do the around the world. I think next time we should do the around the world thing, which we normally do.
Yeah.
That's always fun because you're going around literally country to country and figuring out what's happening. But guys, my request to everybody before you guys sign off, leave a comment on Abhijit Saab's page and my page as well. Leave a comment, leave a like, and we shall see you the next time. Till then, thank you, sir. Namaskar. Jai Hind. Jai Bharat.
Namaskar. Jai Hind. Jai Bharat.